I would make comics even if nobody ever saw them. In fact, I've got sketchbooks full of comics that probably will never see the world. That mode of expression is so in me that I would do it anyway. But having said that, it's so fantastic and fascinating to get feedback from people that enjoy your work as well. And again, some of the interactions I've had with people that have been very surprising and unexpected has really helped me to keep going with what I'm doing. It's helped kind of validate why I do what I do in the first place and why I spend so many hours drawing on my own at night. I'm thinking of a specific couple of experiences that I had. For example, recently I received a book in the post and a handwritten letter from someone that had bought one of my comics, and they'd given me this book as a present to say thank you, because the comic that I had done had touched them so much and helped them process something so deeply that they wanted to express that. And what was weird is the book that they sent me was one of my favorite books as a child, but I couldn't remember the name of the book or who had written it. I couldn't track it down. So this kind of little magic synchronicities happen, I find, quite a lot. For me, it's a reminder to be brave and to put that stuff out in the world and see what happens. And as long as I'm being authentic in my experience, it's going to relate to someone else's, I'm sure. Again, these little things that happen, I think, are a reminder that what we put out in the world is important and it matters and it does affect people, and we might never know the extent of that. In fact, we won't. But for me, it's a reminder to have some kind of integrity in that expression and to give to the world rather than take, I suppose.
The feedback is important because for me, it helps me expand on all these ideas I have, and especially for me, because my comic book is like any child from 12 up can read it. And the feedback is always important. It helps me to sort of expand on my imagination and things that I can create. And I'm always sort of interacting with my audience through a lot of workshops that I run, because I create these workshops through schools in Edinburgh and Glasgow on how to create your own superhero. So I tell kids, tell me what superheroes they like and why they like them, the super villains. And then I tell them why I created Beats of War and E.T. and why it's really important to me. And I feel like just doing those workshops for me, it's like another way of giving back to the community, but also, opening up doors to new creators. Because some kids tell me, Etienne, I think you should maybe add this character, name. And kids are really smart. They always have these really cool ideas. So their feedback, as even though they are young, I really take it on board. And also I do other workshops with older people who read comic books, some who have never maybe read comic books. So I always, because you have to think about the audience. It's not about you, even though you're creating an original story. I think it's always good to hear feedback. Any feedback, constructive feedback, I love it, because that's how I grow and that's how I can create better stories.
I mean, now I've been doing regular webcomics, like a couple of pages a week for like 7 or 8 years. So it's like got to the stage where every time an update goes up, I get lots of comments on it. I guess the weird thing about webcomics is they go up mostly week by week. Obviously there's more scroll format comics now that will be doing like one episode that's like a sort of more of a chapter. But whatever happens, you're reading it in like a chunk. And I almost think that my stuff might be better to read all in one go. That's quite why I like releasing them as like PDFs or as print books, because I think they can be good to read all at once. I think that it's worth thinking that everyone's different opinion like has its own like value. Like if you're like, well, that's not what I was thinking of it doesn't mean that that's not like that own person's point of view. It just like different people are all going to be putting their own thing on what they're getting out of the comic when they're reading it, and that's fine. Yeah, I love reading what people say. I really like, especially when I used to be able to do conventions pre-pandemic, or getting like messages on Patreon of people that are a bit more like in-depth, being like, this meant a lot to me, like I was going through something really hard and this was really important. My like choose your own adventure books, I often get people telling me about playing it with like their kids, or like teachers playing it with like after school groups and stuff like that, and that means like a huge amount. And I think especially for webcomics, I think as an author you often don't get a lot of feedback. Like you spend your whole life doing something and you don't necessarily hear loads back about it. So it's definitely very important in that it like keeps me doing it. And also my Patreon is like why I am able to keep doing my webcomic. Like that's a way that readers interact with me, that's like they have made it possible to do the comic and also to like print the books. I just couldn't, there would be like no point or motivation to keep doing this like extremely time consuming thing without that. I think that it's useful to be able to, I guess, make a distinction, like not all feedback has to be important to you. If it's not going to help you reading all the Goodreads reviews of your book, like that's fine, don't read. Like you can just read them and be like, okay, no media is for everyone. I think that's helpful for me to bear in mind. If I read a review that's like, didn't care for this, it's like, well, or like people who are like, oh, Finding Home is too slow paced for me. It's like, well, that's the comic. Like that's the point of the comic. So if you're not interested in something slow paced, then yeah, it's probably not for you.
Pretty good. So my comic thing, so when I first go to Comic Cons, I thought that people behind the tables really cared if you didn't buy their comic, and like I'd have to think of such a good excuse not to buy a comic. And now I've been on the other side and I realize I don't care if people don't buy my comics. Well, it wasn't for you, I guess, because like there's a tons of stuff there. Like it's like for people to even look at your stall and to stop by and to be invested in it, that is like a really big deal. And to look through stuff, and I mean, like obviously if you stay there for ages and you chat for ages and you look for everything and then you don't buy it, that's a little bit, but like I cannot remember the face of anyone who's ever done that, so it doesn't weigh that heavily on me. Yeah, I think generally I tend to have really positive experience at conventions. I white passing enough. I have quite a positive experience at conventions generally, I would say. People tend to be quite nice to me, and I think like when people remember you and come back, that always makes the day. One of me and Emma's favorite interactions was at Edinburgh Comics Arts Festival, where this queer came up and was like, bought a comic from us, and then was like, doubled back around and realized we were pretty much the only people in the whole place doing WLW content, and bought more stuff. And like it looked like excitement on a baby gay's face when they see your stuff and they like it and they get into it. That is really special and that's really wholesome. I do it for the baby gays, and they like when they follow your work and they, you know, continue to support your stuff online. That's great. Like, I mean, people don't have to buy stuff from you to still be a great supporter of you, and like a lot of the times people maybe don't buy stuff but they follow you online and then they, you know, continue to like big up your stuff, and that's always quite special, I think. Yeah, I tend to have great reactions at I wish I had a really funny story about someone just being the worst, but I can't think of any.
I've really missed it. So I had to launch Barking during the pandemic in the end. I'd had a launch that was supposed to happen at the Lakes in 2019, so Lakes International Comic Festival. It got delayed, but the book was delayed due to printing problems with my publisher. So I had to launch without a book, which was really ridiculous. But I ended up taking a load of the original artwork up. So I made like a mini kind of exhibition. And then I was amazed just from the amount of stuff I'd done on social media, how people knew enough about the book and were interested and just wanted to come and talk to me. And that's really nice. You know, I think it's really wonderful to have that people go, oh, I've read Barking. And it was really weird to have someone go, oh my God, you're Lucy Sullivan. So far, very positive. You know, I've had really, really great conversations, and you can get into really deep conversations, people talking about maybe the book they want to make or how to get into it, or whether they've read your work or what your work's about, or you know, your interests, and I love that. I love that you can just get into these really kind of obscure conversations and really wonderful kind of moments of meeting of minds with people, and I'm really looking forward to that again. I must work on the getting them to walk away with some comics as well, especially because, like I said, my suitcase weighs an absolute ton and I cannot bring it home with me. Plus I've had a load of hardbacks couriered and they are not coming back. I've got, so, you know, come to Thought Bubble, buy a hardback of me so I don't have to carry it home.
The feedback is like the most important part. If you have watched anything to do with Book Week Scotland and you haven't filled in the evaluation, please do that. It's hugely important because when it comes to the programming that I'm doing at Book Week Scotland, which is the sense of like everybody should be a reader, if something isn't working for people or isn't accessible to people or doesn't make people, my cat, doesn't make people feel like they are involved or valued by literature and reading, I want to know about that and I want to fix it. So it's really, really, really important to me. And the way people kind of interact with me as attendees, a lot of the time I'm like moving very quickly at high speed to try and do something. I'm normally like, where are the photography consent forms? Where is this? Where is that? And I'm normally just like in go mode. So I don't think that people get to interact with me that much when I'm working. Being at events and talking to people, it's normally like quite a a warm environment, though I have had experiences at events when I was working on full colour where it felt awkward or strange or very vulnerable. Like there was a point where like we had the sign that was like, we are looking for BAME comics creators, and somebody came up and was like, oh, it's for minorities. And I was just like, and I was sitting at the table and I could hear them, and I was like, do I star on someone at this convention? And it's like, but at the same time they did that, there was a young woman of colour who would have fit the age range for the project, because I think it was 14 to 26-year-olds. He was approaching the table, heard that, and then walked away. I remember that being a moment of me being like, there is still that, it doesn't really go away, but that hostility is there. But also that sense of like, I have done a good amount in industry, so like maybe I will get a bit more like basic respect than the average bear. And it just reminds me of like the way people would talk to you or perceive you when I was younger. Overall, I have a really, really positive time, but I still see and experience things like that. But on the whole, it's to a minimum, and I'm also like a bit more emboldened to tell people off. But there was like somebody I would deem as a child standing there as well at the same time, and it made me very uncomfortable.
I feel like we have really positive like feedback from our readers and stuff. Like I do comic conventions with my partner Steph, who I meet our Super Adventure fans at conventions, but I also it's been weird. Like we get a lot of like really nice comments online and stuff. We still have those connections, but there are like 2 books that came out during lockdown, like Minecraft Volume 2 and like Donut the Destroyer. So for us, we usually work on these books and then we would do a lot of like in-person events around their launches, and we missed out on that this time. So coming back to conventions and like having people come up and just be like, I love Donut the Destroyer, or like I really enjoyed Minecraft. It's been like really like refreshing and nice to just like have that in person. It's so kind. Like if anyone's ever said anything nice to a creator at Comic-Con, like no, it means like a lot. It's wonderful just to have like these weekends where we get to meet our like readers and stuff and connect with people. Feels like it just refills like my HP bar like a lot. Comics is like this weird thing where you stay at home and you just, well, maybe you work in a studio with other people, but it's like a solitary thing where you just work on a project and you work on it for a huge like amount of time, and then it comes out and it's just like, oh god, do people like this? So when people are like, yes, I like it, it's like, it's very healing, it's really nice. And it just like refills your passion for it. So it's been so wonderful every time like we get to talk to readers and stuff. It's incredible.
Okay, so I already said, the number one reason why I do what I do is that I want my fans and my readers to see my stuff and just go squee. That is the main thing. I mean, at conventions and at events and book fairs and such and stuff, like I like having table because I like being busy. I like selling my books directly. I like making someone just go, I've met the author. I've met the artist. For me, that makes me very happy to know that I've been able to sort of like fulfill that experience, I guess, for the fan. So it makes me happy to make my fans and my readers very happy. I like talking to my fans. I don't like talking too long. Actually, I joke about this. Sometimes, it's like, depending on the type of fan you are, some people like they buy my books, so essentially they're paying me and I'm going to be nice to them. Okay. Some people pay me to be mean to them, I swear. I don't know. I seem to have this kind of persona or personality that sort of like comes across as, it's like, I'm going to be mean to you and you're going to like it. And the thing is, they come back and back and back and back again. And yes, there's a couple of fans sometimes where obviously, the world of comics attracts a lot of people who may have a little bit more difficulty understanding some social dynamics and kind of like the unspoken rules of kind of like how to deal with people. And that's absolutely fine, because it's like, neurodiversity is a thing. Everyone isn't going to be like completely holistic and like, know exactly the right thing to say. So, I completely understand that. So therefore, sometimes I just have to be really blunt and tell them, I'm going to have to be straight with you here. Okay. Right now, when there's a table between us, we're not buddies, okay? If you're on my side of the table, we are buddies because we're colleagues and we're working together. If you are on the other side of the table to me, that means I am working, you are not, okay? It's all very well for you to want to hang with me and sit and chat and chill or whatever, but right now I'm working. You are going to make it difficult for other people to buy my stuff. Hang with me afterwards, all right? Come back here at 5 or 6, then you buy me a drink, I buy you a drink, then we can actually chill. But right now, I am working. To be honest, there was one person I had to say it to, and they were like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, good. good, you see, because somebody told them how to interact a little bit more positively. Generally though, I'm very, very nice. It's just, some people, if they need a firmer hand, I will be more firmer with them.
That is a really good question. So that is a really difficult thing to gauge in the academic world. A lot of the feedback that I get in my research will come at conferences, because that's my biggest arena for presenting any ideas that I have. Again, because I'm stuck in that sort of weird gap between biblical studies and comic studies, that can be difficult. So some of the feedback will be positive. I mean, I have noticed that mostly the positive feedback always comes from women. I always get women going like, oh, that's really cool, thanks for telling us about this. A lot of it is mansplaining, and some of the feedback is really unhelpful because of aforementioned gatekeeping issues. So there's that. And the other set of feedback I get more frequently and more welcomingly comes from my students. Because I get to present my research to them just through lectures and so forth. And they're mostly excited and invigorated by the research because they never thought that you could study something cool like comic books in relation to religion and the Bible. So that feedback is important for me. The rest of it, I don't really care about. I see academia as one big giant conversation, and we all get to say our piece. And if people like it, that's great. And if they don't, that's fine too. I don't have to be affected by that if I don't want to be. But I do care what my students think, because they are the ones that, have the future and have control of the future in a way, in a big way. So I want them to take ideas that I have and run with them if they agree with them, or to challenge them if they don't. And I'm more interested in hearing from them than anyone else.